If you're blowing up your own lab on a Monday morning, you are officially burnt out. That was my first coherent thought, as the blast wave punched me in the back and slammed me into the opposite wall. The world went white, then orange, then red. A shock of heat, a roar like a dragon swallowing the building, the hiss of ruptured gas lines. For a full second I just lay there on the polished tile, ears ringing, lungs refusing to cooperate. Then the sirens kicked in. The pristine lab corridor of Echelion's main research wing, my oh-so-precious level 7 clearance area, turned into a strobing nightmare of crimson and white. Emergency shutters began to slam down in sections, thick fire doors sealing one after another with echoing thuds. Move, I croaked at myself, because apparently my survival instinct needed a verbal memo. My fingers were cramped around two things like my life depended on them, which, annoyingly, it did. A thin black flash drive, slick with sweat, and a small glass ampoule in a shockproof case. The ampoule clinked sharply against my palm as I forced myself upright. Cold white light glared off the mirrored panels lining the walls, reflecting a dozen versions of me. Black smudges over my face, hair sticking up in soot-streaked curls, lab coat half burned at the hem. I looked like a deranged raccoon that had picked a fight with a furnace. Hot. Overhead, an automated female voice repeated on loop. Code red, lab breach, evacuation protocol initiated. All level 7 personnel report to... Yeah. No thanks, I muttered, and staggered into a run. Behind me, back where my station used to be, the remains of my reactor core were busily eating through millions of credits worth of equipment. I'd had exactly 3 minutes of internal debate before I overloaded the containment field. My therapist would have called that impulsive. I preferred efficient. The corridor stretched ahead. A glossy tunnel of glass panels and steel. My shoes squeaked on the floor, each step echoing beneath the wail of sirens. At my back, a fire door slid down with a heavy thunk, cutting off the worst of the heat. The air smelled like burning plastic, ionized metal, and the distinct tang of failure. You really did it, Ezra, I told myself, half hysterical, half impressed. You actually nuked your career. Not just my career. Echelion's crown jewel project. Their future monopoly. And my little mistake called the neutralizer. The word rolled through my head like a lit match. Neutralizer. It sounded so harmless, like a detergent. Removes 99.9% of all fateful bonds. In reality, it was a biochemical chainsaw aimed directly at everything this city's economy was built on. Pheromones, heat cycles, mating triggers, claim-locking marks, every invisible string the corporations used to herd omegas where they wanted them. My formula loosened those strings. Cut some of them completely. Put them into our hands instead. Well, that had been the plan. Until Echelion decided my work belonged to them. Until Dr. Hayden Cole, brilliant, celebrated alpha, my mentor, my colleague, my you should, trust me, Ezra, decided I'd function better as intellectual property and potential house pet. Don't be dramatic, he'd said when I'd refused his little proposal. You'll be cared for. Protected. You won't have to worry about anything. Translation, sign your rights away. Let me put a collar and a brand on you, and maybe I'll even cite you in the paper. The memory flashed hot and ugly in my chest as I rounded a corner and almost slipped. Someone's knocked over cart, instruments scattered everywhere. I hopped over a drop tray of injector guns, grabbed the wall for balance and cursed as another fire door began lowering ahead. Come on, come on, come on. I bolted, heart hammering, lungs burning. The space under the door shrank fast. For a second, it felt like one of those dreams where your legs won't move. I dove. Hard tile met my shoulder, sparks hopped along the floor as the door slammed shut a centimeter behind my sneaker. Pain shot down my arm. I rolled onto my back and stared at the ceiling, panting. Overhead, the panels were spider-webbed with cracks. Dust drifted down, glittering red under the emergency lights. I could taste metal on my tongue. My hand throbbed around the ampoule case. If I broke this, there wouldn't be a second chance. This was the last pure sample of the formula. Unregistered, unlogged, uncopyable. The flash drive had data, but without this, it was theory. With it was revolution. I pushed myself up again, swayed, and kept moving. Echelion's labs were designed like a maze, but they weren't designed for people trying to escape. Every door wanted a code. Every intersection led you deeper into the building before it spat you out on an approved path. Which would be great for containing accidents. Less great for when I was the accident. I slammed my palm against the security panel for the next door. The screen lit up, request for clearance blaring back at me. Veil Ezra. Level 7, I snapped. Voice coming out hoarse. The scanner whirred. Thought about my life choices. Then politely flashed red. Access revoked. The system chirped in that same cheerful female voice. Please report to your supervisor. Sure, I said. I'll just go find what's left of him. I yanked off my ID badge and swiped the emergency override on the underside. A little hardware glitch I'd built in for nights when the system misread my pheromone profile and locked me out. The panel stuttered. Flickered. Come on, baby, I pleaded, forehead touching the cool glass. We've had good times together. Don't do this now. There was a soft chirp, then a low grinding noise as the door started to open. Victory surged in my chest, right before a hot, sharp bolt of pain shot up under my left collarbone. I sucked in a breath, stumbling back from the panel. The pain wasn't like a pulled muscle or blunt force. It was deep and burning, like someone had poured liquid fire right beneath my skin in a precise, crescent shape. Right in the place where marks go. No, I whispered. Absolutely not. We are not doing this. My fingers pressed over the spot through the charred fabric of my shirt. There was nothing there. No raised edges, no fresh scar, no ink. I knew because I checked. Often. Obsessively. I was not marked. I had never been marked. But my body disagreed, apparently, because the pain flared again, synced perfectly with the distant thud of boots somewhere in the building and the metallic taste in the air. My vision tunneled for a second. I forced myself to breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. It helped. Sort of. Just adrenaline, I told myself. Or smoke inhalation. Or my anxiety finally learning new tricks. The door finished grinding open. I stepped through, limping a little, clutching my treasures. The corridor beyond was narrower, with a strip of glass on one side looking into another lab. Through the window I saw chaos. Sprinkler systems drenching equipment, white-coated. Figures huddled on the floor as security herded them toward emergency exits. None of them looked my way. Good. The overhead speakers crackled. For a heartbeat I thought it was another recorded message, some sterile protocol update. Instead, a new voice poured through the system, low and steady. The kind of voice that made the hair on your arms stand up even before it finished the first sentence. Ezra Veil. I froze. Of course they'd patched someone in. Of course it couldn't just be faceless guards and fire doors. Lyon loved theatrics too much. The voice continued, unhurried, deep enough to vibrate in my ribs. This is Enforcement Officer Lyon Kessler. You have initiated a level red incident and destroyed proprietary assets of Lyon Corporation. A beat. Surrender now. I rolled my eyes at the ceiling. Wow, no please. Rude. My pulse jumped anyway. I'd heard of him, everyone in upper labs had. Lyon was Lyon's favorite monster story. The alpha they sent when contracts were broken or omegas slipped their handlers. Efficient, unstoppable, annoyingly professional. I hadn't expected his voice to sound so calm. Not cruel, not mocking. Just contained. The pain under my collarbone pulsed once, hard. Subject Ezra Veil, the voice went on, just the slightest hint of a sigh under the formality. You have 7 seconds to surrender before I start counting fast. 7 seconds, I repeated under my breath. What, do I get a prize if I make it interesting? I pushed off the wall, turned away from the nearest camera, and flipped it off, just in case he could see me. Then I sprinted for the far end of the corridor, where the emergency stairwell should be, and saw the red lockdown light above it. Of course the stairwell was sealed. I skidded, nearly crashing into the door, and slapped the bar anyway. It didn't budge. 6. Lyon's voice counted, maddeningly even. Emergency protocol then. When all else fails, light yourself on fire, and hope the building respects your choices. There, on the right, half hidden behind a recessed panel, the covered box of a fire use lift. Old-fashioned, manual override. Bypassing most of the digital security so evac bots could drag unconscious bodies out. Perfect. 5. I ripped off the plastic cover, yanked down the lever. The metal door jolted, then began to grind open. Every gear screaming like it hadn't been tested since before I was born. Heat from the lower floors rolled up the shaft, carrying the smell of smoke and molten wiring. My eyes watered. 4. I clutched the flash drive between my teeth, hugged the ampoule case to my chest, and pried the lift door wider with my shoulder. Inside was a narrow steel platform and a manual brake. 3. This is a terrible idea, I told nobody and everybody. Then I jumped. The platform shuddered as I landed, the brake squealed, and for a breathless second I thought the cable would snap and that would be it. Ezra Vale, chemist, fried in a corporate elevator shaft. Instead, the lift lurched downward, at a controlled, stomach-dropping speed. 2. The walls flickered past, level 6, level 5, level 4, emergency lights turning everything into a red and white blur. I coughed, blinking through the smoke, every bump sending another spike of pain through my shoulder. By the time the platform screeched to a halt at ground level, my legs felt like jelly. The lower door was already cracked open from the pressure of the blast. I shoved it with my shoulder. It gave, groaning, and a wave of cooler air hit my face. I stumbled out into the loading bay, into chaos. Sprinklers hissing, alarms still, wailing, emergency vehicles flaring blue and white through shattered glass doors. Smoke clung to the ceiling, spreading like a dark tide. For half a second, I thought I might actually make it. Then I saw him. He stepped out of the drifting smoke beyond the ruined entrance, silhouette cut sharp against the flashing lights. Tall, broad-shouldered. Tactical gear sitting on him like it had been custom-printed for his muscles. Dark hair damp with mist. Jaw set in a line that said he did not have time for my nonsense. Lyon Kessler. Our eyes met across the wreckage, and the phantom mark under my skin burned like it had just woken up and recognized its owner. Cold air slapped me across the face the moment I stumbled out of the loading bay. It carried the sour tang of rust and wet metal, the industrial perfume of Lyon's backlot. The area behind the corporation's main tower was a sprawling maze of abandoned warehouses. Stacked freight containers, and towering cranes frozen mid-motion like skeletal giants. Perfect place for a chase scene. Less perfect when I was the one being chased. I darted between 2 rows of shipping containers, boots splashing through puddles. The wind cut through my torn shirt, raising goosebumps across my arms. Sirens still wailed behind me, but out here the sound was swallowed by the vast open yard. My lungs burned. My shoulder throbbed. The flash drive dug into my palm with every stride. I didn't dare look back. Not because I feared what I'd see, but because I already knew. Lyon Kessler didn't need to shout to announce he was behind me. His presence moved like gravity, silent, steady, inevitable. I slapped a hand into my pocket and pulled out a small silver packet. It fit nicely between my index and middle finger, the size of a tea bag, filled with a chemical blend I'd invented for crowd dispersal. Or in this case, alpha diversion. I snapped it hard. A loud pop cracked through the air, followed by a cloud of violently mint-scented smoke bursting behind me. The smell was so aggressively fresh it could have stripped paint. I grinned through my panting. Let's see him track me now. A voice drifted out of the haze behind me. Calm. Annoyingly unhurried. You're wasting those. I swore and sprinted harder. Oh, come on. I cut left between another stack of containers. The metal walls loomed over me like cliffs. Water dripped from their seams. I could hear Lyon's footsteps, not pounding, not rushing. Just present. Each one measured. Predicting. Adjusting. Hunting. Does it Lyon train you to be this creepy? I shouted over my shoulder. Or is it just a personal hobby? No answer. Just the soft scrape of boots on gravel. I threw another packet. Another pop. More mint. The entire yard now smelled like a deranged toothpaste commercial. Still, those footfalls didn't falter. I risked a glance back. Lyon moved through the thinning smoke like it parted for him. Tall, broad-shouldered, all in dark tactical gear that only emphasized the carved lethal lines of his body. Hair damp from the mist, jaw set in that flat, unamused line. His expression didn't change. Not even when my last chemical packet detonated 3 feet from his face. Seriously, I gasped, show some emotion. But that was the thing about him. His whole aura radiated minimum setting. Emotionally cost-efficient. Alpha, in power-saving mode. Distant clangs echoed as a crane swung slightly in the wind. The metal containers formed a shifting labyrinth. Corners, blind turns, sudden dead ends. I counted on those. Unfortunately for me, so did Lyon. After 3 turns, he'd already adjusted his route, cutting diagonally to intercept. I kept moving, heart battering my ribs, but the space ahead narrowed. 2 containers pressed close together, forming a high-walled alley. Dead end. No, not entirely. A ladder ran up the side of the left container. The top wasn't far. If I could get up there. I jumped, grabbing the first rung, feet slipping on the slick metal. I hauled myself upward, adrenaline screaming through me. When I reached the top, the whole yard spread beneath me, rows and rows of steel, a grim geometric playground. I backed away from the edge, searching for the next escape point. Calculating distances, a shadow rose behind the containers. Not possible. I spun. Too late. Lyon didn't climb the ladder. He vaulted from a lower crate to the adjoining platform, and grabbed my forearm just as I turned to leap again. His grip was iron. Not painful, not cruel, just unbreakable. My breath caught. Not because he'd caught me, because the moment his skin touched mine. Heat. Not adrenaline, not fear. A deep instinctual flare like someone striking a match inside my chest. A pulse under my collarbone that echoed like a memory. Lyon inhaled sharply. His eyes, dark, sharp, assessing, narrowed, just a fraction. A flicker. Recognition? Confusion? Something primal and unwanted? Whatever it was, he shut it down instantly. I ripped my arm halfway free, voice cracking more than I wanted. Well? What now? Hit me? Isn't that what you people want, right? Bash first, ask questions never? Lyon didn't even blink. If I wanted to hit you, he said, I would have done it already. I hated that his voice was so calm. So controlled. It made the burning under my skin feel even more like a betrayal of me by my own stupid biology. I tried to yank back again. He didn't tighten his hold, he just shifted it, redirecting my momentum until I was standing in front of him instead of falling. He guided me, not dragged, not shoved, down the stacked containers to the ground. His movements were precise, efficient, quiet. Just like a hunter, just like someone who had done this too many times. At the base, a matte black enforcement vehicle idled. Engine humming low. He opened the rear door and gestured. I bristled. No handcuffs? I snapped. They're unnecessary. Oh, thanks for the honor. I threw myself into the seat with as much spite as someone covered in soot could muster. He closed the door. Again. Quiet. Controlled. He circled to the driver's side. The shadows between the containers swallowed him, then spat him back out an instant later as he slid behind the wheel. I stared at him as he started the engine. No gloating. No anger. No satisfaction of a job well done. Just that same flat, unreadable focus. So, I said as the car rolled forward, voice dripping sarcasm, taking me to the big shiny corporate dungeon? His eyes stayed on the road. No. I blinked. No? I'm not taking you to the center. His fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on the steering wheel. I need to understand, he said quietly, what exactly you did back there. I expected a holding cell. Gray walls. Steel bars. A camera in the corner tracking every blink. What I did not expect was this. Lyon's apartment was unfairly clean. Minimalist. Neutral tones of slate and charcoal, broken only by warm amber lights built into the ceiling. A soft glow washed over wooden floors and an L-shaped couch that looked like it had never once known crumbs. It was the kind of place where you'd expect to find a meditation guru, not an enforcement officer with a reputation for dismantling fugitives like IKEA furniture. Then again, maybe Lyon meditated after dismantling people. He guided me inside with a light touch, barely pressure at all, yet somehow it got me moving faster than a shove would have. The door clicked shut behind us. 3 seconds later, to my shock, he reached for my wrists. What? Hey. I jerked back on instinct, shoulders tensing. He paused, looked at me steadily, then wordlessly unlocked the magnetic cuffs and pulled them away. The restraints snapped open with a soft hiss and fell into his hand. Just like that. No speech, no warning. He simply freed me. I stared at him. You're kidding. No. He set the cuffs on a shelf beside the door, casual as putting down keys. You're not a threat right now. I just blew up a corporate lab, I reminded him. Yes. And escaped arrest. Yes. And threw chemical bombs at you. Technically they were irritants, he corrected calmly. Not explosives. You're missing the point, I snapped. He turned away, shrugging off his tactical vest. On the contrary. God. Infuriating. A walking monolith with opinions. I rubbed my wrists, glaring around the apartment. Everything looked like it belonged in a minimalism catalog. except for one thing that absolutely did not match the aesthetic. A spice rack. A large, well-used one. Seriously? I said. Paprika? Turmeric? Rosemary? What is this, the secret softboy side of the corporate Grim Reaper? Lyon gave the rack a brief glance. I cook. My brain short-circuited. You cook? Yes. Voluntarily? Something almost like amusement flickered in his eyes. Sit? What if I don't want to? Then stand? Ugh. I hated that I didn't have a retort ready for that. I wandered deeper into the apartment, taking stock. No family photos. No clutter. A gun safe in the corner, matte black, fingerprint lock, big enough to store enough weaponry to take down a medium-sized government. Nice decor, I said. Really brings out the, my hobbies include incarceration and light murder vibe. His footsteps were near silent on the floor. It's practical. Of course it is. I drifted into the kitchen. The counter was spotless. The kettle, oversized brushed steel, probably could boil water for a small army, sat at the center. Without a word, Lyon reached past me, filled it at the sink, and set it on the stove. I blinked. You're making tea? I asked. You look like you need it. I hated how much that derailed me. Omegas didn't get tea. Omegas got tranquilizers and contracts and endless forms. I folded my arms tightly. Tea is not going to make me trust you. It isn't meant to. He leaned a hip against the counter, arms crossed. It's meant to keep you from collapsing. I bristled. I'm fine. You're shaking. I'm cold. It's warm in here. Then I'm aggressively cold. He looked at me for a long, quiet moment, the kind of stare that saw far too much. Then he said, the system isn't designed for people to stay whole, Ezra. Not omegas, not alphas, not anyone. Oh great. Philosophy hour. Yeah, I said, rolling my eyes hard. The system is a prison for omegas. It's a prison for everyone, he interrupted softly. Omegas just get fewer windows. That shut me up. For a moment. Then the heat under my collarbone flared again. Sharp, insistent. I hissed and pressed my fingers to my skin. Lyon straightened. Pain? I forced a shrug. Allergy. To alphas. Very common. You know how it is. You're lying, he said simply. I glared at him. And you're extremely annoying. We held each other's stare for a few seconds before I turned away, pretending to inspect the spice rack again. Anything to avoid the frustrating awareness of him, his scent, his presence, the phantom heat crawling under my skin. The kettle hummed softly as it began to warm. This, apparently, was my life now. Stuck in a tidy, emotionally repressed alpha's apartment with no immediate plan except don't die. So naturally, my brain decided this was the perfect moment to attempt an escape. While Lyon rummaged for mugs, I crouched and casually reached for my shoelaces. Then angled myself behind the island counter where he couldn't see my hands. I tied the ends of his boots together. Not my greatest work, not even in the top 50. But sabotage was sabotage. He stepped away from the cupboard. Took one step. Caught the tug. Paused. Then looked directly at me. Not angry, not surprised. Just disappointed. You're not subtle, he said. I lifted my chin. Maybe you're just unobservant. He took another step, untangling the laces with a single fluid movement, and closed the distance between us faster than I could blink. His hand landed on my shoulder. Gentle. Unyielding. Like a steel door padded with kindness. You're not leaving, he said. Watch me. I shot back and pivoted toward the exit. He intercepted me before I even reached the hallway. He didn't grab, didn't pin. Just shifted his body to block the doorway, a human barricade. Move, I snapped. No. Move or I. You won't, he said quietly. He said it not as a threat, but like he already knew me. The kettle whistled. The sound broke the tension like glass cracking under heat. Lyon stepped aside only enough to gesture toward the living room. Sit, he said again. We need to talk. Oh, now we need to talk? After kidnapping me? You're not kidnapped. That is exactly what a kidnapper would say. He ignored that. He handed me a mug, steam curling from the rim. I need you to show me the files you stole. I didn't steal them, I muttered. Then show me. I wrapped my hands around the mug, avoiding his gaze. The tea smelled like chamomile, with honey. Of course he had honey. I'll show you, I said finally, lifting my chin. When I stop hating you. Lyon didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just nodded once. I can wait. Lyon's living room looked like it belonged in a minimalist lifestyle magazine. And then there was my corner of it. A makeshift workstation had taken over the coffee table, my cracked flash drive disassembled into neat components, a battered notebook with dog-eared pages, and a cluster of handwritten formulas sprawled across loose paper like frantic constellations. Lyon had dragged over one of his dining chairs and sat across from me, arms resting on his knees, posture relaxed but eyes sharp. He watched me like a man studying a bomb he wasn't sure wouldn't explode again. To be fair, he kind of was. So, he said finally, explain it. I rubbed my temples. You want the short version or the version where I use big scientific words to make you regret asking? The clear version, he said dryly. I'll do my best, I muttered. I tapped the ampoule case between us. The sample inside glimmered faintly, pale gold under the warm lights. This, I said, is the neutralizer. A biochemical inhibitor designed to disrupt pheromone signaling pathways, not suppress, not block. Rewrite. Lyon's brow twitched. Rewrite. Think of it like editing the code of our biology, I continued. Instead of just turning the volume down, it changes the language entirely. When the formula is active, heat cycles don't trigger, bonding hormones don't spike, marks don't bind. The system loses its leverage. His hands clasped together slowly. Ezra. I didn't let him finish. Yes. I know exactly what it does. You understand, he said, voice low, that corporations built their entire economy on pheromone regulation, bond contracts, marriage licensing, heat management drugs, alpha training programs, everything. I know. My nails dug into my palm. If you release this, he went on, they won't survive it. A bitter laugh escaped me. And did I survive them? Silence fell, thick, heavy. Lyon didn't look away. He didn't snap back with regulations, or corporate mantras, or the usual think rationally, Omega. He sat there, listening. Really listening. It unsettled me more than rage would have. What made you do it? He asked at last. There was no accusation in his voice, only raw, genuine curiosity. Like he needed to understand me, not for the mission, but for himself. I hesitated. My thumb slid along the edge of my notebook, stopping at a page where the ink had smudged. A long time ago, I said softly, someone tried to mark me. His shoulders went rigid. It wasn't legal, I added. Wasn't mutual. Wasn't complete, thank the stars. But it was enough to leave something behind. His gaze searched mine. A scar? A ghost. I forced a thin smile. A reminder of how small omegas are supposed to be. My voice wavered, so I covered it with sarcasm. You can imagine how great that felt. Lyon's jaw tightened. For a moment, he looked less like a corporate enforcer, and more like a man realizing the ground beneath him was rotting. He stood abruptly. Not in anger. In something more complicated. He stepped closer, almost carefully. The air shifted when he moved, warm, faintly charged. My skin prickled before I even understood why. He inhaled. Quiet. Controlled. But unmistakably a scent check. My heart jackhammered. Oh no. Oh no. This wasn't normal alpha curiosity. It wasn't even territoriality. It was recognition. A flicker across his expression told me he felt it too. Something off-key, something that made instinct strain against sense. Your pheromones. He murmured, frowning. Something's not. He reached out. Fingertips hovering near the side of my neck. Right where the ghost of a mark still lived. A shadow. A memory. A wound. My breath seized. Every nerve screamed. Before he could touch me, I jerked violently away, the chair scraping across the hardwood. Don't. My voice came out raw. Don't touch me. Lyon froze. Not offended. Not confused. Just still. Like a man who'd stepped unknowingly onto thin ice. I wasn't going to hurt you, he said quietly. I know, I shot back, chest tight. That's not the point. He straightened, hands dropping to his sides. He didn't push. Didn't demand. Didn't even move closer. He simply nodded once. Then we go at your pace. I hated how relieving that was. And I hated that it was relieving. I gathered my papers with shaking hands, shoving the formulas together to hide how rattled I felt. Lyon watched me, expression unreadable but eyes gentler than they had any right to be. For the first time, I realized this man wasn't the monster Shellyan painted him as. He was something scarier. Someone who might understand me. And that, somehow, was infinitely more dangerous. The quiet inside Lyon's apartment shattered with a single vibration. His phone lit up on the counter, 3 blinking alerts, each one flashing red. Lyon crossed the room in 2 strides. His expression didn't change. He was too trained for that. But something in the air shifted. Tightened. He read the message. Then he read it again. I didn't need enhanced alpha senses to feel the dread rolling off him. What? I asked, tension creeping up my spine. He didn't answer at first. He locked the screen, set the phone down like it suddenly weighed too much, and exhaled. Once, through his nose, controlled, but sharper than anything he'd shown so far. That bad? I pressed. They noticed, he finally said. Noticed. My absence. Your escape. The lab breach. The shutdown of Level 7. His jaw worked. Command has issued a pursuit directive. A pursuit directive. In Echelian terms that meant, teams authorized. Questions optional. Collateral damage expected. And for Omegas? No mercy. A chill skated up my arms. So, what are you saying? Lyon's gaze flicked toward me. An unreadable mixture of calculation and something else I couldn't name. They'll be here within the hour, he said. To take you. And you, I shot back. If I cooperate, I'll be reassigned. Reassigned, I repeated flatly. As in punished, demoted, or quietly disappeared? He didn't deny it. Instead he looked at me. Really looked. Something raw and unguarded flickered behind his eyes. If I hand you over, he said quietly, you won't survive the night. The words punched the air out of me. Not because I didn't know it, of course I knew it. But because hearing him say it made the threat real, made the choice real. And, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, what do you plan to do exactly? He didn't speak. He acted. He grabbed his jacket, pulled a duffel from under the bed, and started stuffing gear inside with precise, practiced movements. Wait, I said. Are you running? Not from them. He slung the bag over his shoulder. With you? I stared, stunned. He was serious. Lyon Kessler, the corporation's favorite hunting dog, had just chosen to break rank. Chosen me. A strange heat curled under my ribs. Not fear. Not attraction. Something far thinner, fragile. Hope. Come on, he said, moving toward the door. For the first time since the explosion, I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to escape, but because the ground beneath my worldview was shifting too fast. Why? I demanded. Why are you doing this? You could leave me and walk away clean. He looked back over his shoulder, and for once, he didn't hide anything. Because, he said, for the first time in years, I can do the right thing. My stomach twisted. My phantom mark pulsed. My breath caught for a fraction of a second. Lyon. Later, he said. Move. We moved. The hallway outside his apartment was dim, illuminated only by emergency strips. Lyon kept one hand hovering near the gun at his thigh, not drawn but ready. His steps made no sound. Mine absolutely did. When we reached the parking structure, he scanned the area quickly, then ushered me into the passenger seat of an unmarked black vehicle. The moment the doors shut, the world felt smaller. Closer. Too close. Lyon turned the key, and the engine purred to life. He reversed out with controlled urgency, eyes flicking to the rear view. Then the side mirrors, checking angles only seasoned operatives used. My pulse thudded, uneven. He wasn't talking. At all. The silence pressed on me until I broke it. Why didn't you tell them you caught me? His grip tightened on the wheel. Because I didn't. That's semantics. No, Ezra. His voice was low, rough edges bleeding through the usual calm. I didn't catch you. I found someone worth saving. My breath hitched. The night outside blurred. Warehouse lights streaking by, cranes casting long skeletal shadows over the road. The car interior was dark, lit only by the dashboard glow. Every breath felt too loud, too warm. And then it happened. The scent. A subtle shift in the air, warm, electric, unmistakably pheromonal. My skin prickled. The heat under my collarbone flared like someone striking a match beneath it. I clenched my jaw. Lyon. Something's wrong. His voice dropped an octave. I know. He didn't sound calm now. He sounded strained. We shouldn't be reacting like this, I muttered. You're an alpha. I'm unmarked, he finished. You're unmarked. This shouldn't be possible. My fingers dug into the seat. So why? I don't know. Another hum. This one not mechanical, instinctual. The air between us thickened, like pressure building before a storm. Lyon swallowed hard. His knuckles whitened on the wheel. Try to breathe, he said. Whatever this is, fight it. I am, I said through clenched teeth. Try it yourself. His mouth twitched, half humor, half pain. Even now, he had the audacity to look composed. Lights flashed behind us, maybe security vehicles, maybe nothing, but Lyon's jaw set. We're almost clear, he said. Hold on. I nodded, heart hammering, skin burning, the scent between us twisting into something almost magnetic. We didn't know what was happening. We didn't know why. But one thing was certain. Running together was no longer just a decision. It was a necessity. The abandoned factory came into view like a half-buried skeleton, rusted metal ribs, shattered windows, and a sagging roofline that creaked every time the wind changed its mind. Most people would have called it dangerous. I called it familiar. Lyon cut the engine, and the car's headlights washed over the cracked concrete steps. He scanned the perimeter, silent, alert, before giving a small nod. Go. I slipped out of the car, drawing in a long breath. Dust. Old chemicals. Metal. The scent hit a place in my chest that felt strangely like nostalgia. This used to be mine, I said quietly. Lyon followed me inside, footsteps echoing in the cavernous dark. Your old lab? One of them, I said. A place Ishelian didn't know about. They thought I used it for preliminary testing. I smiled crookedly. They were almost right. The interior was a graveyard of past work. Dust-thick tables, rust-stained sinks, glass shards glittering like tiny stars across the floor. The ghost of who I'd been still lingered in the air. I flicked on a portable lamp from a supply cabinet I'd stashed years ago. Warm gold light spread across the room, chasing shadows into corners. Lyon watched me with that unreadable expression again, like he couldn't decide whether to be wary or impressed. Probably both. Generators in the back, I said. If it still works, we'll have power. He nodded once and disappeared into the darkness with the confidence of a man who didn't fear being ambushed by stray chemical fumes. A moment later, the hum of machinery echoed through the building. Lights flickered overhead, buzzing reluctantly to life. I exhaled, tension melting. For the first time since blowing up my lab, I felt stable, capable, like my brain was finally syncing with my body. Lyon returned, wiping dust from his hands. It held. Good, I said, pulling out boxes of equipment. Help me set up. He moved beside me without hesitation, lifting heavy crates, positioning lamps, clearing the tables with smooth, economical motions. Not once did he question my instructions. Not once did he mishandle delicate equipment. I hated how capable he was. It made me feel partnered, which was dangerous. I laid out the glass vials and tubing. Hand me the 10 ml pipette. He grabbed it without looking. I blinked. How did you know which one that was? I read your notes earlier. You read my... Those were coded. They were inefficiently coded. I narrowed my eyes. You're irritating. You're unorganized, he replied without heat. Which somehow infuriated me more. Still. The rhythm of it settled something inside me. I mixed compounds. He sterilized equipment. I calibrated sensors. He adjusted airflow. We moved around each other in a strange, wordless synchronization. Too easy. Too comfortable. I shook myself. Focus. I am, he said. That's the problem, I muttered. Half an hour passed in a blur of measurements and chemical reactions. I'd almost forgotten he was there, until his voice cut through the quiet. Ezra. The tone was different. Not commanding. Not professional. Raw. My hands stilled over the mixing tube. What? Why do you hate Marx more than anything else? I froze. Of all the questions, he chose the one I spent years burying. The air in the factory shifted. Thin. Cold. I set down the vial carefully. Because marks are just a polite word for ownership. That's not what I... It is, I snapped. It is for omegas. Don't pretend otherwise. He didn't flinch. I'm not pretending. I'm asking. My throat tightened. The memories clawed up faster than I could suppress them. It happened when I was younger, I said, voice low. A senior researcher. An alpha mentor who thought he had the right. Lyon went utterly still. He tried to mark me, I said. No consent. No bond. Just power. Because he could. Because I was convenient. Because omegas belong to whoever claims them first. A tremor ran through my hand. I fought, I continued, and it didn't take fully. But it left something, a shadow, a scar I can't see. Lyon's jaw flexed, the only sign of emotion. Anger, but not at me. Not even near me. He hurt you, Lyon said quietly. He tried to own me. A long silence stretched between us, thick as the dust on the floor. Then, heat. A sudden sharp flare beneath my collarbone. Not the dull ache from before, but a bright, searing pulse. My hand flew to my skin. Lyon's head snapped toward me. His nostrils flared. You feel that too, I breathed. His chest rose in a shallow, uneven inhale. Yes. Panic crawled up my spine. This isn't normal, it's responding to you. Why is it responding to you? He stepped closer before catching himself, halting mid-motion, like something reeled him back. I don't know, he said, voice rougher than I'd ever heard it. But his eyes, dark, conflicted, told a different story. He felt it. He recognized it. Some buried instinct tugged at him too. The heat spread, curling along my nerves, tugging toward him like a magnet drawn to its pair. I stumbled back, breath shaky. Stay there. He stopped immediately. Obeyed immediately. His hands curled at his sides as if resisting something primal. The old factory hummed with machinery. The lamplight flickered. The scent between us thickened. Whatever ghost of a mark clung to my skin. It had just woken up. And it remembered him. The factory had gone still, too still. Only the low rumble of the generator filled the air, vibrating through the floorboards. Accompanied by the slow drip 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 of water falling somewhere in the dark. The shadows along the walls stretched long and warped, the lamplight flickering like it was nervous too. Maybe it was. Maybe it sensed what was happening before we did. My skin still burned under my collarbone, persistent, insistent, like a memory refusing to stay buried. I backed away from Lyon, breathing hard, trying to force the heat down with sheer will. It didn't listen. It rose instead, spreading up my neck in a slow, razor-edged wave. Ezra, Lyon started. Stay there, I snapped. He froze instantly, but the tension in his body was palpable, coiled, strained, barely leashed. His instincts were reacting, dragging him toward me like a tide, while his mind fought tooth and nail to hold him in place. It was the first time I'd ever seen him look unsettled. And that terrified me. I turned away, stumbling toward the workbench, needing distance, needing to breathe. My hand shot out to steady myself. My foot hit a loose piece of metal. It slid. I slipped. And before I could even curse, Lyon lunged, his arm wrapped around my waist, the other catching my shoulder, preventing me from crashing face first into the table. The motion was so fast, so precise, it felt less like rescue and more like instinct snapping into dominance. His fingers brushed my neck. Right over the mark, white-hot electricity shot through me. Lyon inhaled sharply, freezing mid-motion. His pupils blew wide, breath stuttering, like something ancient and primal had slammed into him. I gasped, shoving at his chest, but he didn't move. Not out of stubbornness. Out of shock. Out of realization. His voice, when it finally came, was hoarse. Unsteady. Almost reverent. This isn't a fated bond, he murmured. This is a mark. My blood went cold. Lyon, I whispered. Don't. His hand hovered just above my neck, like he was scared to touch me and terrified not to. It's not my mark, he said, more to himself than to me. But. He swallowed. It's reacting to me. My heart slammed hard enough to hurt. That's not possible. He shook his head once, eyes locked on the invisible scar beneath my skin. Ezra. This feels like an active metaphase reaction, like a mark sensing its... Don't say it, I choked. Match. I pushed him, hard. He let me, stepping back immediately, chest rising and falling too fast. He wasn't calm, not anymore. For the first time since I'd met him, the mask cracked. What the hell does that mean? I demanded. Because last I checked, I'm unmarked. I am unmarked. His gaze softened, but it didn't waver. You're not? No. I backed up until I hit the metal table. No, we are not doing this. That mark never completed. It didn't bind. It didn't stay. You were told it didn't, he said quietly. But that doesn't make it true. The room tilted. The generator hum became a roar in my ears. "Look at me," he said softly. "Don't," I whispered. "Ezra." I did. His eyes held something I didn't want to see. Not pity, not possession, something far worse. "Truth. Tell me," he said gently. "All of it." The words cracked something open inside me. I sank onto the edge of the table, shaking. He tried to mark me, my mentor, the one who said I was special. The bitterness nearly strangled me. He cornered me after hours, told me I needed a handler to keep me safe. And when I refused, I lifted a trembling hand to my throat. He bit me. Lyon's eyes darkened. Not with desire, not with the instinctual pull, but with fury. Fury so sharp it looked like it hurt him to contain it. "He didn't finish the bond," I continued, voice flat. "Someone walked in. It was interrupted. I was told the mark would fade in weeks. Months, at worst." Lyon stepped back another foot, giving me space, his restraint almost painful to watch. "Ezra, marks don't just fade, not like scars, not when they reach the threshold of metaphase." "I know that," I snapped. "But he told me." "He lied to you." The words hit harder than the explosion had. I pressed both hands to my mouth, dragging in air that didn't want to come. The room blurred at the edges. I've been running from him for years. From that moment. From everything it made me. "And now," Lyon said quietly, "that mark is reacting." I squeezed my eyes shut. "Because of you." Another silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with authority, or dominance, or even certainty. "I'm not your marker," he said. "But your body thinks I could be. That's not normal. That means something was altered." My breath hitched. "Altered? By who?" "Lyon," he said without hesitation. "Who else would experiment with bonding protocols?" My stomach twisted violently. "Ezra." I looked up. He stood far away now. Arms at his sides. Chin tilted down so he didn't overwhelm me with his size. He was giving me space. He was fighting his own instincts to do it. "We go at your pace," he repeated gently. Even now. The tightness in my chest loosened by a fraction, just enough to breathe again. Because he wasn't approaching. He was protecting. From himself. From the bond. From the truth neither of us was ready to face. Whatever lived under my skin, whatever ghostly mark clung to me, it had chosen its moment to awaken. And now? Now it was looking at Lyon. The second floor of the factory was nothing but hollow echoes and moonlight. Tall windows stretched along the length of the wall, some cracked, some fogged with age. Night leaked in through them in long silver stripes, falling across dusty floors and broken rails. The air felt thinner up here. Quieter. Like the building held its breath for us. I wished it wouldn't. I needed the world to drown out the noise inside my head. I shoved open a warped metal door, and stepped into the wide, empty mezzanine. My heartbeat was frantic, uneven, pounding against my ribs like it wanted to escape my body entirely. The burning under my collarbone had finally dulled, but the fear hadn't. My voice snapped before I could stop it. "I hate alphas." The shout ricocheted off the walls, too loud, too raw. It wasn't controlled. It wasn't sarcastic. It was a wound tearing itself open. Behind me, footsteps stopped. Lyon didn't chase. Didn't crowd me. Didn't try to reason with me. He stood in the doorway, silhouette carved by the moonlight. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly. Quiet enough that the words barely reached me. "Then, hit me." I spun, chest heaving. "What?" He stepped one pace forward, hands loose at his sides. His expression wasn't cold. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't even guarded. It was tired. "Hit me," he repeated softly. "If it helps. If that's what it takes to make you feel safe again." My throat closed. "You think this is about hitting you?" I spat. "You think this is simple, just crush the scary alpha, and poof, trauma cured?" "No." He shook his head once. "Ezra, I know exactly what this is. And I also know I'm not him." I flinched. Because he said it so steadily. Because he wasn't trying to deny my pain. He was trying to name it. Lyon took a slow breath. His voice dropped even lower, almost lost to the hum of the generator downstairs. "Just don't make me into someone I'm not." The words sank past the panic, past the anger, and hit something tender. He wasn't defending himself. He was asking. For honesty, for clarity, for the right not to be punished for another man's sins. I stepped back until my shoulders hit the cold window frame. The glass was icy through my shirt, grounding me. Moonlight traced the edges of Lyon's face, jaw tight, brows drawn faintly, eyes dark and steady. He wasn't moving closer. He wasn't trying to soothe me. He was just there, waiting, giving me space. No alpha I'd ever known understood that concept. You could push, I whispered. You could take advantage of everything happening. This stupid bond reaction, my fear. I won't, he said immediately, almost sharply. I would never. Not with you. It hit harder than anything else he'd said tonight. My chest loosened. Just a little. Enough for breath to slip through. The adrenaline spike faded, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold floor, knees pulled up. My hands shook, so I pressed them against my legs. I didn't expect him to follow. I especially didn't expect him to sit too, keeping 2 full feet of distance between us, back resting against the opposite support beam. The gap was deliberate, respectful. It felt like an apology without words. Silence stretched between us, no longer sharp, just heavy, the weight of truth settling in. Eventually, Lyon spoke, voice gravelly from restraint. You're allowed to hate what happened to you, he said. You're allowed to fear what could happen. But don't lock yourself in that moment forever. A pause. I'm not your enemy. I looked at him, really looked. This man who'd hunted me, who'd carried me, who'd chosen to run with me instead of delivering me to death. You're not like them, I said quietly. It wasn't flattery. It wasn't gratitude. It was recognition. Lyon's shoulders eased a fraction. His gaze softened, just barely visible, but real. I'm trying not to be, he replied. But it's difficult to break patterns you were trained to follow. You're doing a decent job so far. You tied my shoelaces together, he countered. I snorted despite myself. And you didn't shoot me. That seems like a low bar. Still counts. A ghost of a smile tugged at his mouth. We sat there, 2 broken, mismatched people in an abandoned factory, letting the moonlight paint us in pale strips. After a long while he asked, almost a whisper, Ezra, what do you want? I swallowed. Because the real answer was terrifying. I don't know, I said honestly. But for the first time, I don't feel alone trying to figure it out. He nodded, eyes lowering. I want to be someone different too, he said. Someone better. A fragile thread of understanding stretched between us. Thin, delicate. But finally there. A beginning. The factory plunged into darkness so fast it felt like the building exhaled and extinguished itself. One moment, the second floor was drenched in moonlight. The next, every bulb flickered, buzzed, and died, leaving only void. Then came the sounds. Boots hitting concrete, metal clinking. The synchronized thrum of armor plates shifting. And then, the unmistakable sweep of flashlights cutting through the ground floor. Lyon was on his feet before the first beam of light sliced across the stairwell. Ezra, he said quietly, they're here. Not fear. Not panic. Cold, focused certainty. My pulse hammered in my ears. How many? At least 2 squads, maybe more. He stepped between me and the stairs, stance widening. They've surrounded the building. A voice barked from below, harsh, amplified. Commander Kessler. Stand down and surrender the asset. Lyon's jaw tightened. They brought elites. Is that bad? I whispered. Yes. Fantastic. The flashlights moved with frightening efficiency, sweeping corners, illuminating dust motes like snowfall. Their footfalls rattled the factory's old metal bones. They knew exactly what they were here for. And they wanted me alive. Alive and processed. Lyon turned to me, gaze fierce. Stay behind me. Lyon. I said behind me. Before I could argue, a beam of light hit the edge of the stairwell. And then another. And then, they're flanking, Lyon muttered. We need to move. But there was nowhere to move. The mezzanine had only one exit. And the elites were already climbing. I felt the rising panic clawed my ribs. We're trapped. No, he said. Not while I'm here. I don't know what made me more breathless, the conviction in his voice, or the fact that he stepped closer without hesitation, setting himself firmly between me and incoming danger. Like a shield. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Clang. Clang, clang. Boots hitting metal steps. Then, Kessler! A voice hissed up from the darkness. Orders are to retrieve the Omega. Stand down. Lyon braced. I'm not giving him to you. The factory froze. Silence stretched. The only sound was the distant drip of water. Then, all units, the commander growled. Take him. Lights surged up the staircase. Ezra, Lyon murmured. Get ready to run. What? Run where? Just do it. The first elite soldier burst onto the mezzanine. Armor matte black, visor glowing faintly red. I reacted on instinct. My hand dove into my bag, grabbed the compact metal cylinder I'd rigged earlier, and slammed it against the floor. A burst of thick, opalescent smoke exploded outward. Heavy, cloying, chemical sweet. The elite choked and stumbled, visor flickering as the compound interfered with its sensors. Lyon moved like a storm. He swept forward, grabbed the soldier's arm, twisted sharply, and sent him crashing into the railing. Another soldier surged up behind him. Lyon spun, dodged the baton strike, and struck the side of the helmet with the butt of his gun. 2 down. 4 more up the stairs. The smoke thickened quickly, buying seconds, not minutes. Lyon! I gasped. More incoming. I see them. He didn't look at me. But his stance widened, shielding as if his body alone could fend off the whole squad. Another elite burst through the fog, faster than the others, and swung a stun baton directly at me. Lyon grabbed the soldier mid-swing, forcing the baton upward. The electric arc lit the darkness, illuminating Lyon's face, snarling, focused, furious. I'd never seen him look like that. Like a man defending something he refused to lose. The baton slipped from the elite's grip, and clattered across the floor. Lyon kicked it away. But then the second squad breached the far end of the mezzanine. 10 soldiers, armed, coordinated, trapping us. Clang. Their boots synchronized. Lyon, I breathed. We're cornered. He positioned himself in front of me again. I won't let them take you. This isn't just about taking me. They'll kill you too. That's my choice, he said, steady as steel. The elites leveled their tranquilizers. Asset located, one announced. Prepare for retrieval. Time fractured. My breath thinned. They'd take me. They'd break me. They'd finish what my old mentor started. No, I wouldn't let that happen. My hand flew to the ampoule case strapped inside my vest. My pulse thundered in my ears. Ezra, Lyon said without turning. Don't. I have to. The elites advanced. I stood, lifted the ampoule, and smashed it at my feet. Light, bright, searing, erupted across the floor in a pulse that rattled the entire mezzanine. A shockwave tore through the air. Not heat, not force, resonance. The neutralizer, imperfect, unstable, experimental, shattered into vapor and surged outward like a living thing. The elites staggered mid-stride, hands flying to their helmets as their internal pheromone regulators shorted. The suppressors on their necks sparked, bond lock implants malfunctioned. Panic clung to the air. The commander's voice crackled through comms. Signal disrupted, hold, hold. They didn't hold. They lost coordination instantly. 3 dropped to their knees. 2 collided with each other. 1 fired blindly into the wall. Another ripped off his malfunctioning visor with a strangled sound. Chaos devoured their formation. Lyon didn't wait. Move! He yelled. He grabbed my arm, not harshly but firmly, and pulled me toward the far stairwell. We sprinted down the metal steps as confused voices echoed behind us. Control failing. What the hell? Retreat, retreat. We hit the ground floor running, lungs burning, boots slamming against concrete. Outside the night yawned open, dark, cold, endless. Lyon shoved open the back exit, pushed me through and followed on my heels. We didn't slow, didn't look back, didn't speak. Not until we reached the safety of the car and the factory shrank into a trembling silhouette behind us. Lyon slammed the door, breath ragged. I clutched the dashboard, heart still sprinting. He looked at me, jaw clenched, eyes fierce. You saved us, he said. For now, I whispered. He nodded, starting the engine. For now, and together. We vanished into the night. The new lab didn't hum with fluorescent light or smell like sterilized metal. It smelled like tea, and dust, and wood, and something warm that had nothing to do with temperature. The safe house was an old cabin tucked into the hills an hour outside the city. From the outside, it looked like the kind of place someone's quiet uncle might retire. 2. Weathered wooden walls, a small porch, trees rustling like gossiping neighbors. Inside, we'd turned the main room into our entire world. A heavy wooden table served as our workbench, scarred from decades of use. Glass vials and tubing sat beside mugs and a chipped sugar bowl. A repurposed bedroom had become equipment storage. The generator out back powered exactly 3 things: the lights over, the table, the small refrigeration unit, and the electric kettle. Priorities. Lyon moved around the space with a familiarity that still startled me sometimes. He'd shrugged off the enforcement uniform weeks ago. No more tactical gear, no more crest stamped on his shoulder, just soft worn shirts and sweats that made him look almost approachable. If you ignored the fact that every part of him still broadcast lethal if necessary. He stood at the stove now, pouring hot water into the kettle, steam curling around his hands. The faint hiss of boiling water filled the quiet. "Tea," he said, without looking at me. "Before you forget to drink something for the next 6 hours." I hunched over the workbench, squinting down at a set of readings. "I don't forget. I selectively prioritize." "You forget. I'm literally making history," I muttered. "Hydration is optional." He slid a mug into my field of vision. I took it. Not because he was right, just because my fingers had already wrapped around the ceramic before I could argue. The light in here was soft, amber bulbs instead of harsh lab strips. Outside, late afternoon faded into that hazy pre-evening, a gray-blue wash pressed against the windows. The cabin creaked occasionally, like it was commenting on our work. On the table, a small vial of stabilized neutralizer formula caught the light and threw it back in a muted shimmer. We'd done it. Well, almost. The worst of the volatility was gone. The formula could be deployed in low doses, targeted, reversible. No more explosive shockwaves. No more uncontrolled resonance. No more being at the mercy of suppressors, forced marks or pheromone contracts. At least, not forever. "Did you see the news update?" Lyon asked, leaning against the counter. "Which one?" I took a sip of tea. "The one where I'm a dangerous biochemical extremist, or the one where you're an unstable rogue enforcer with emotional issues?" "The second one was a leak," he said. "The official report calls me a traitor." I snorted. "Congratulations. You're finally interesting." He huffed out something that wasn't quite a laugh. "We'd been here for weeks. Long enough for the city's initial panic to dull into background noise. Long enough for the bounty on my head to climb. Long enough for Lyon's name to become shorthand in security circles for, "Don't trust your own." We didn't talk about it much, not because it wasn't real. Because it was. "Hand me the notes from yesterday," I said, nodding toward the stack of papers at his elbow. He brought them over, and for a moment his hand brushed mine as he passed the pages. Heat flared under my collarbone. Familiar now. Manageable. But still there. We'd learned, in the time since the factory, to live with the ghost between us. The mark that shouldn't be, hadn't gone away. Some days it pulsed faintly. Some nights it lay quiet, like a sleeping animal in my bones. We didn't know what Lyon had done to it. To me. But we were finding ways to make sure no one could do it to anyone else again. I shuffled the notes, scanning the latest reactions. Lyon didn't go far. He pulled out the chair across from me, sat, and began cleaning a set of glass pipettes. With the kind of precision that would have made any lab supervisor weep with joy. "So," he said casually, eyes on his task, "Generation 12 is holding up." For once, I sighed. Still some drift in the binding window, but it's minimal. "We're close." He nods slowly. "Close enough to change things?" "Close enough to make them nervous," I said. "Close enough that somewhere in a boardroom, they're already drafting contingency plans and trying not to admit they're terrified of a nerd in a stolen hoodie." "You're not terrifying," he said. "I blew up a lab." "You're still not terrifying." I narrowed my eyes. "Rude." He didn't argue. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. With everything we'd survived. With the unnamed thing hovering between us every time his gaze lingered a fraction too long. I set the notes down. "I don't know," I said quietly, "what the old mark really did to me." His hand stilled. I kept going. I'd learned that if I stopped mid-sentence, the words would fossilize in my throat. I don't know if it rewired my instincts. I don't know if it changed my pheromone signature permanently. I don't know if it's still tied to him somehow, or if... I swallowed. "If it's trying to tie itself to you, Lyon's eyes lifted and met mine. He didn't rush in with comfort. Didn't dismiss it. Didn't say it'll be fine like he could will it into truth. He set the last pipette down carefully. "You don't owe anyone a new mark," he said, voice steady. "Not me. Not him. Not the world that tried to force one on you." He held my gaze like he wanted to make sure the words landed. "You never have to be claimed," he continued. "Not again. Not ever. If you choose to stay unmarked for the rest of your life, that is your right. No one gets to argue with that." Something in my chest cracked. "And," he added softly, "whatever is under your skin right now, whatever they did to you, it doesn't get to define who you are. You do." The kettle clicked off behind him. For once, I didn't have a sarcastic retort. I stared at the faint ring on the table where my mug had sat earlier. "If I ever do it," I said slowly, "if I ever make a new mark, it's not going to be because I'm scared of being alone, or because the bond demands it, or because someone tells me it's for my own good." "Good," he said. "It'll be my choice," I finished. "Only mine." A beat of quiet. Lyon's voice dropped to something almost fragile. "Then," he swallowed, "when you're ready, if you're ever ready, choose me." The world seemed to exhale with us. The generator hummed. The cabin creaked. Outside, the wind brushed against the walls like a slow, restless tide. I looked at him. At the man who'd hunted me. Then saved me. Then pissed me off repeatedly by making me tea and letting me be angry without punishment. At the man whose instincts wanted to close the distance between us, and who spent every day proving he wouldn't unless I asked. My throat felt tight. "I'm not ready," I said honestly. "I know," he replied. "I'm not asking you to be." I reached across the table. My hand found his. Warm. Solid. Steady. The phantom mark under my skin flared. Not with fear this time, not with panic, but with something softer. Anticipation. Possibility. His fingers curled around mine, careful, like he was holding something precious and breakable. I smiled. Small. Real. "The thing is," I said, "if I ever do choose someone." He raised a brow. "Yes? You're currently in the lead." A slow, almost disbelieving smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I'll try to keep my ranking." "You'd better," I said. "Competition's fierce. I meet so many people in this secret lab in the woods." He huffed. "Your social circle includes me, a kettle, and a generator. And the generator is starting to look appealing," I deadpanned. He squeezed my hand. Just once. The world outside was still messy. Echelion still existed. The bounty on my head hadn't vanished overnight. Alphas, omegas, betas, everyone was still tangled in a system that had taken generations to build. We hadn't fixed it. Not yet. But on a worn wooden table in a hidden cabin, a vial of stable neutralizer shimmered softly in the light. The first successful batch. The first crack in the foundation. Beside it, our joined hands rested quietly. Not marked. Not bound. Just touching. Our formula wasn't finished. Neither were we. But for the first time, the future didn't feel like a sentence. It felt like something we were writing.